welcome to this new session, which is titled as sourcing decisions. So we will immediately discuss what do I mean by sourcing decisions. So essentially, what we are looking for is deciding whether we want to make the product in house or have the service in house or give it to somebody else who is going to be our vendor. So the session can also be titled as vendor selection, right? So we can also say that we are talking about vendor selection. So for this session, I have referred to a extremely nice book which is written by Professor Sunil Chopra at Kellogg's, Peter Mendel and D.V. Kalra. So you can definitely refer to this book. A lot of ideas that I am going to discuss in this session are coming from this book that is titled Supply Chain Management, and obviously we are talking about making the supply chain better by getting better vendors, by taking correct sourcing decisions. So what are sourcing decisions? So any service, any activity in the organization, it can be done at two places. Either it can be done in house, which means that the organization itself does it, or it can be given to another party, another agency. Let me give you an example. Typically in manufacturing, the raw material is actually purchased from another organization, right? Raw material is purchased from another organization, so they are our suppliers, right? They are our suppliers, so in some ways they are our vendors. So that decision has been taken. So what is the decision there? We are going to say that we are not going to get the raw material ourselves, we are going to buy it from a vendor, right? Then you would say, how can I say that I will get the raw material myself? Well, there are many successful organizations which have taken the decision that they will not give this job of raw material sourcing to a outsider. The very famous example is Reliance, right? Reliance started by used to make those famous Vimal fabric, right? And then they said, what is the raw material required to make the fabric? That's something called there are these specific raw material. Then they started making those, right? And then they started making the raw material required for that, right? So then essentially they decided that they are going to make everything in house, and that is opposite of giving the job to somebody outsider, right? So that is our sourcing decision. So what is sourcing? The first important decision to be taken is who will perform the supply chain tasks, who will do the production for us, who will do the storage for us, who will get the raw material for us, who will transport the raw material, who will transport the final goods, who will do the selling, right? For everything there is always that decision to be taken, whether I do it myself or I give it to somebody who is not me, right? Who is a independent organization, right? It may be an independent organization. I may decide to now give it to my sister organization, right? Or create a department, which I used to do, which is still going to be called in house, but that department becomes so big that I actually create a separate organization out of it. There are all kinds of examples available in the business world. Lots of case studies that you can study where these sourcing decisions have been very, very important decisions in the optimization of supply chain. So earlier, 30-40 years ago, these sourcing decisions used to be very broadly called purchasing decisions. So there was, I don't know whether you will remember it or not, but very old organizational terminology was, oh, I work in the purchase department. So what is my job? My job is to purchase services for my organization, right? Purchase services for my organization. So that purchasing function now has been expanded. Now the job is not only to purchase things, but even before that, as I said, I have to take a bigger decision. I have to take a bigger decision whether to do it myself or buy it from the market. Once I have decided that I'm going to buy it from the market, the next decision is whom do I buy it from? There are multiple people who are probably providing the same service. For example, let us say that I want to outsource my transportation function, right? Once again, I will have to first of all decide whether to do it in house or give it to somebody, that is outsourcing, right? So Doing it in-house means I will have to own a fleet of trucks. I will have to own the entire logistics function, and then I will have to hire drivers, and then I will have to do this route planning and scheduling and everything of trucks from my raw material vendor to my factory, or from my factory to my retailer. So, for example, the transportation function could be upstream. So this is my raw material. This is where my raw material comes from. This is me. This is where I produce using the raw material I get. I produce something, and then I give it to my retailer. Right? Then I give it to my retailer for selling. Now retailer will say, well, yeah, I'm willing to sell, but send me the products. So the products have to be sent from my factory to the retailer. So that is the transportation function. Another transportation function is raw material has to be transported from the vendor who is selling me the material to my factory. So this is the transportation function. I can think of outsourcing or insourcing both of these transportation function, one of the transportation function, right? So first decision is whether I do it myself or I outsource it. As I said, if I decide to do it myself, I will have to own a fleet of truck. I will have to hire drivers. I will have to do all the logistics planning, all the logistics optimization. One of the later sessions in the course, we are actually going to solve one of the logistics problem. All right, network design problem we call it. Right, network design problem. We'll do that. We will do that. So let us say I don't want to do this. I want to hire an outside contractor who will do the transportation for me, which essentially means that I will tell the contractor that there is so much of raw material, sitting in my supplier's place, right? So I will say that all this raw material is going to be available. Make sure that all the periodically the raw material is shipped from my vendor to my factory, right? Periodically, right? So I don't want to be keeping a pile of raw material in my factory, because that will simply occupy my space and occupy my capital. So I want to do this transportation or logistics business carefully. So I will tell the contractor, I want the deliveries at these times. I want this much quantity to be coming to my factory, and then the outside agency will take care of this entire transportation business, right? Transportation function. Similarly, at the downstream, I have final product ready, and those final products have to be shipped. These final products have to be shipped to the retailer, so that the retailer can do the selling. Now, once again, the retailer may not have enough space to store 1,000 products, 10,000 products, right? So retailer says, no, don't send me 10,000 products at a time. Send me 100 products at a time. I can sell only 78 products on day one and 93 products on day two. So what am I going to do with 10,000 products lying in my retail store? So then the transportation partner that is going to be engaged is then will then have to very optimally plan how this transportation will happen from the factory to the retail store. Now there are multiple transportation contractors who are available in the market, right? So then if you as a firm, this is me, right? This is we as a firm. Now we have to decide whom to give the contract for the upstream transportation, whom to give contract for downstream transportation. We may choose the same vendor, we may choose a different vendor, but there are multiple organizations that can do this transportation for you, right? You know that there are so many transport corporations that are available. I can give the contract to anybody. Now, how do I decide that, right? We need to find the best partner. We need to find the best partner, the best vendor, whose capability matches with our requirement, right? Whose costs are matching, right? So all those decisions have to be taken. So as I said, outsourcing then. Outsourcing. So first of all, sourcing is a superset. Outsourcing is a subset of that, right? Sourcing decisions, I may decide to source it from in-house, right? Let me give you another example of insourcing. Let me give you an example. So let us say that there is a multinational bank in Europe. Now they want to say that they want to outsource. They want to perform some functions, some banking related functions, and then they say that I have two decisions. I want to do this. I want to do these banking functions at a lowest possible cost, Let me come to Asian markets and get this function done from the Asian market. Even then, I have not taken outsourcing decision here. I may open a branch of I may open a branch in any of these countries, right? Any of these countries, and then I will hire people and I will get this banking function done sitting in Asian market for a bank located in Europe. So it is the same bank opening a branch office, same bank opening up another subsidiary, right? Not subsidiary. Subsidiary probably is a indirect example. So opening its own unit. So the bank opens its own unit in one of the Asian places, probably because the costs are lower. I can hire people at a lower cost. So that is a sourcing decision taken by the bank. Bank says, I am not going to do this banking function in Europe because it is expensive for me. I will go to one of the Asian markets and get the function done in one of those locations. For that, I am going to do in-house, right? Which means that I will open my own unit. I will open my own unit in one of these Asian places and hire people, and the cost of hiring people in Asia will probably be lesser than cost of hiring people in Europe. That's what the bank thinks. This is a hypothetical example, and therefore the sourcing decision is taken. The other way the bank can look at is, no, why, instead of me opening my own unit in one of these Asian countries, why don't I outsource this job to one of the firms that are located in the Asian countries? So I will not hire people in that country. My outsourcing partner will hire, but they will be told that these are the requirements of this banking function, and this is how I want you to do this banking function. These are the times, these are the deadlines, these are the specifications, and then my outsourcing partner sitting in one of those countries will get the job done for me, right? So that is the sourcing decision. Sourcing decision can be to decide to do it outside or to do it in-house, right? And once we have decided that we are going to outsource, we are going to find the best partner. So whatever is required to fulfill the customer requirements, right? Customer has some demands; those demands have to be completed. Now those demands, either I fulfill it, or I get one of my partners to fulfill that demand, right? On my behalf. So that is how this entire sourcing works. Okay. So essentially the problem is vendor selection and development. I told you very long time ago, 40 years ago, the function was called purchase department, right? About 20 years ago, this function was actually called vendor development function, right? Vendor development function. So it moved, the scope became bigger. It is not only purchasing function, it is the entire vendor development, which vendor to select. I have a requirement of 100 products. I will use vendor 1 for giving me 30 products. I will use vendor 2 for giving me 50 products. All those decisions started getting done in this department called vendor development department, right? So that became the new name for essentially a function. The scope is now bigger, right? Now the scope is bigger. Okay, so what is this? The outsourcing is successful only if this third party that we are bringing in, right? This new organization that we are bringing in makes the supply chain more responsive, right? So supply chain can either be responsive or efficient. We can actually have a separate session on what is a responsive supply chain, what is an efficient supply chain. Broadly, let me quickly summarize. What is a responsive supply chain? A responsive supply chain is a supply chain which is designed to respond to the consumer demands faster, right? More quicker. Responsive, right? Be responsive. Respond to the customer quickly, right? Don't take 6 months. Don't take 9 months. On the other hand, efficient supply chains are designed to make the supply chain operations more efficient in terms of probably cost. So I will not do something just to make sure that I respond to the customer faster. I will do something which will reduce my cost, right? So those are the two dimensions of supply chain performance. Either I can responsiveness on one dimension, efficiency on the other dimension. Can I achieve both? Best thing possible. Can I do I have to sacrifice one for the other, right? Those are the decisions that the supply chain designers have to make. So as I said, this responsive supply chain and efficient supply chain can be a session on itself. Let me stop right here, but When do I decide whether I will bring the vendor? I will bring the vendor only if the vendor makes my supply chain either responsive or makes my supply chain more efficient or achieves both. If achieves both, awesome. Right. So managers have to first of all decide whether to outsource the supply chain activity or do it at home. Once we decide, then the vendors have to be identified and selected. As I said, there are multiple vendors available in the market. How are we going to decide? How are we going to decide? Probably there are not too many vendors. Our requirements are very, very specific, and probably one or two or three organizations can do this. Right. Then we have to go back and decide whether we really want to outsource or not. So to identify and select these vendors, we have to first of all look at the criteria. What is our requirement from this vendor, right? Vendor should have, obviously vendor should have the best possible quality, vendor should have the least possible cost. Are there other requirements? For example, some organizations require that the vendor be located close to them, so that whenever required, the vendor can deliver the products quickly to my factory, right? Sometimes I want my vendors to have specific skills. So what are those skills, right? So I will have to evaluate. First of all, I will have to create that evaluation criteria and then evaluate the various options on that criteria, on that evaluation criteria, right? So all these questions come up then, right? How do I select a vendor? Should I select suppliers who are similar in capability? So let us say that I know that I cannot get the job done by selecting one supplier. I know that I have to have at least two suppliers. Now, should these two suppliers look similar to each other? Should these suppliers be very, very different to each other? There are advantages and disadvantages in both, right? For example, if I select two similar suppliers, similar in capability, right? Similar in capability, then my uncertainties are less. For example, they are similar in capability. Therefore, if one vendor gives me a quality of 98%, the other vendor gives me a quality of 97.5%. They are more or less similar. So I don't have to worry, right? My production function can be smooth. On the other hand, I may require the vendors to be different in capabilities, right? Different in their scenarios, so that if one vendor is somehow not able to fulfill my requirement, the other vendor is not similar and therefore not facing the same problems. So the vendor is very different, and therefore the vendor may be able to fulfill my requirement because my other vendor is not able to, right? So sometimes I may want the vendors to have complementary skills. Sometimes I want my suppliers to be similar in capability, right? So all those decisions have to be taken. Our session, this session is obviously about introducing this function of sourcing, but the data part of this topic is going to be on this question, right? How similar are my suppliers? Can I say that, oh, I have 10 suppliers. Out of these 10 suppliers, these 4 are similar. There is another group of 3 which look similar. Then there is a group of 2 that is similar, and then there is a singleton guy. There are a couple of more who cannot be grouped in any one of the categories, right? So how do I then find similarities? Find differences, essentially cluster my suppliers, right? So that's what is going to be the data part for this particular topic. Okay, so the idea is through this clustering, through this grouping, through this categorization, the manager is going to know more about the supplier and therefore can take a better decision of which vendors to select.